Grid tonight. NASCAR penalized several teams for late race shenanigans at Martinsville. Will this send a message to the garage about not playing games on the track? Gabriel Bortoleto is moving up to Formula One in 2025. What does it say about the road to F1 ladder system? MotoGP is moving the season finale in Spain from Valencia to Barcelona. Was this the most sensible decision? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambert, and with me are Joshua Birch, Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, and Ben Snyder from Grid Encore and NASCAR.info. We encourage everyone to comment in the chat, ask questions, and support us through Super Chat. Now, Josh, take away with our top story this evening. I have a lot to discuss tonight.
We really do. Good evening, Kobe. Good evening, Matt. Good evening, Ben. Nice to have you with us as well. So, following the controversial ending to the NASCAR Cup Series race at Martinsville Speedway, NASCAR has issued penalties to several teams towards the end of the race. It seemed like Chevrolet and Toyota were playing games to help Christopher Bell and William Byron advance to the Championship 4. Many accused those manufacturers of giving orders to the number 23 team of Bubba Wallace, the number 3 team of Austin Dillon, and the number 1 team of Ross Chastain. When Bell needed a spot to advance, it seemed like Wallace slowed down to give it to him, while Dillon and Chastain tried hard not to pass Byron and put him below the cut line. Now, after NASCAR looked at the on-track data and everything that was said over the radio, they came to the conclusion that those teams engaged in race manipulations and actions detrimental to stock car racing. Wallace, Dillon and Chastain were docked 50 driver points and fined $100,000. 2311 Racing and Ridge and Childress Racing and Trackhouse Racing were also fined $100,000 each and docked 50 owner points. Crew Chief Booty Barker and Justin Alexander and Phil Surgeon were all suspended from this week's season finale at Phoenix. It's certainly a sting for Barker, who is set to make his final appearance as Wallace's crew chief before transitioning to a different role at 2311. Spotters Freddie Kraft, Brandon Bennett, and Brandon McReynolds were also suspended for Phoenix, along with team executive Dave Rogers, Tony Ludders, and Keith Roden as well. All 3 teams initially planned to appeal the penalties, but 2311 decided to withdraw its appeal. Any guesses there? Elton Sawyer, NASCAR Senior Vice President of Competition, said they looked at the precedent from a few years ago when Cole Custer slowed down to help his teammate gain a spot to advance in the playoffs, and explained that NASCAR wanted to ramp up the penalties from Martinsville to get their point across about upholding the integrity of the sport. The photo taken by David Jensen from Getty Images as well. Matt and Ben are here to discuss this bit. Matt's up first. Did NASCAR do enough to prevent teams and manufacturers from engaging in this type of controversial conduct?
Good evening, everybody. I hope we can take your mind off other things that are happening in the world if you feel so obliged over the last 24, 48 hours with NASCAR penalty chat, which seems to be a recurring theme on Grid tonight. I'm going to go back to what you said here, Josh, in the script and use it in my own words. Now, after NASCAR looked at the on-track data and everything that was said over the radio, they used that data and they chucked it in the river. They did absolutely nothing. The penalties are absolutely bogus. Just for suspending crew chiefs and giving them a monetary fine is just to show that something's been done, because this will not change. This will happen again next year if the consequences fall the way they did. Byron was on the cusp. He had 2 Chevrolets catching him. They decided to park up behind him and run side by side to let, I think it was Brad Keselowski, wasn't it? It was the next sort of non-Chevrolet person coming up behind through. They did exactly what they needed to do to keep Byron in his position. And then on the other side of the coin, Wallace was the first person a lap down towards the end of the race. Bell was second of the people 1 lap down. And Bubba had a tyre going down. Strangely, with 3 laps to go, when other than that his car was fine, and parked up basically to let Bell through in the final corner of the last lap of the race to get into the tiebreaker, which he would have then had to get him through to Phoenix next week. So what a mess. Ruined a great afternoon of racing. It was one of the best short track races we've had for quite some time, because we actually had passing and that was great. And just ruined the end of the race. Good evening, Joe. He says, I think they should have DQ'd the 3 drivers involved from the race. But again, what difference does it make? Then none of them were in playoffs. This is the point with this system is if you're out, it doesn't make any difference to you or your team or your sponsors or anything else. So this will happen again. But this is what happens when you have manufacturers battling against each other with that one spot difference like we had. It's a good job there was no Ford guys a point in or out, because we've had all three of them playing games towards the end of the race there. So that was one saving grace, I suppose, but it will happen again. And this is just a penalty to show that something has been done. But otherwise, we'll be talking probably about this again next end of October, November, when we go back to Martinsville for this same race.
Yeah, I completely agree. Wouldn't mind having all three of us up here on the screen so that I can be talking to Matt as well when I save us here, because I know, Matt, you and I went back and forth a little bit after Austin Dillon did what he did at Richmond, and I think the Richmond comparisons have been brought back up again, because what is everybody comparing this to? They're comparing it to Spingate and the team orders from 2013, and what were the penalties from that? The one guy on Michael Waltrip Racing that didn't have anything to do with the shenanigans that were being pulled, Clint Boyer, was the one who spun out. He got a 50-point penalty, but he was already ahead of enough in the chase that it didn't make a difference. He got to stay in. What difference did it make to Brian Vickers? He was the one that came into the pits. He was running part-time that year anyway. The 55 got docked owner's points for whatever that means. I know you and I went back and forth on that a little bit in our chat this week as well. But Martin Truex Jr. was the one that had nothing to do with that, and yet he was the one that got thrown out of a chase for that. In this situation right here, we have Christopher Bell and William Byron. They're trying to, Toyotas and Chevys respectively, are trying to benefit their manufacturer teammates, if you will, because they're not even technically teammates, right? We all know 2311 has an alliance with Joe Gibbs, but especially for Chevy, what good does it do for Richard Childress Racing and Trackhouse Racing if a Hendrick Motorsports driver's in the championship 4 instead of a Toyota Gibbs driver? You know, and those guys are the ones that, you know, William Byron's still going to be racing for a championship this week, despite the actions of the 1 and the 3. And I got to say, we mentioned this on Encore as well, Matt. I don't know if you got to watch the show. Got to hear what Ricky Craven had to say. He was calling for the drivers to be suspended for the week, because they're the ones that were ultimately in control of their race cars. They're the ones that did the actions on the track that NASCAR deemed unacceptable. And I like what NASCAR had to say here as well. I think, again, it's pretty ironic if you want to flash back to 11 years ago. They said there was no precedent to penalize our OEMs, and we'll look into that in the offseason for next year. Well, there was no precedent, like I said a couple of months ago, to put a 13th driver in the chase. You found a way to do that anyway, because you thought that was the appropriate response to what happened at Spingate in 2013. Just because there's no precedent, I feel like when the line is crossed this far and it's this egregious, who else is making these orders? Clearly, like I just said, these are not even teammates. These are just manufacturer teammates. There seem to be only 3 teams in the sport, Chevy, Ford, and Toyota, that are making these calls to these manufacturers, telling them to make these deals, as was said on one of the team radios. I think it was the 3-car. Do they know the deal? Where's that deal coming from? It has to be coming from the manufacturers. So to me, the only way you nip this in the bud, as Daniel Trotta said on SiriusXM on Monday, is you have to punish the manufacturers. And yet here, what we see here, you know, suspending crew chiefs or spotters or whoever, again, it's a slap on the wrist penalty to teams that aren't even in the playoffs anyway. What difference is it going to make if they finish 17th or 19th or 21st in the championship regardless? They didn't make their ultimate goal of getting into the playoffs, and these are all the 1 to 3 of the 23. They're all teams that, you know, I think had that goal for sure at the start of the year. Certainly, you know, you would think would be an attainable goal for them. So their season's already ruined from that perspective. What difference is it going to make if you dock them 50 more points? You're just kicking somebody while they're down. I just don't see how this does anything to deter a similar situation from happening in the future. Now, the last thing I want to say on this, you know, I heard it on SiriusXM this week as well. Pete Pistone, obviously the individual that I go back and forth with the most in terms of having this very strong disagreement. But he was not the only one, in complete fairness to him. But he wrote the column for Racing America and SI saying, blaming the playoff format is a convenient way of not taking responsibility for your actions. And he goes on to say that you can't blame the format here because in any close championship fight, we could still see shenanigans like this. But I think the counter to that has to be, and you saw it from, again, a champion of the sport in Brad Keselowski right after the race ended, this format incentivizes what we saw, it makes it more likely because it tries to guarantee this outcome, and not just for the championship, for who's going to be the fourth and final driver in the standings, who's 1 point above this magical cut line that we got here. And you've got 2 different manufacturers with 5 different organizations involved, all pulling these shenanigans, all getting on the radio, trying to manipulate the outcome of the race, get them 1 more point so that they can be 1 point to the good. I don't think we get that. Maybe we get it at Phoenix. I don't know. I mean, Pete brought up the example of owners entering start and park cars so that they could park them if their main car ran into trouble and they'd lose a few more points. I don't know if that's close to a relevant analogy, but I guess if you want to call that race manipulation, I will take that 1,000 times out of 1,000 over the mess that we saw on Sunday. My biggest frustration out of everything that we've seen the last 72 hours or so is that they want you to blame everything. And what by they, I mean the Pete Pistonis of the world. I mean Elton Sawyer with him saying you got to bring your A game every single week with this format. Give me a break. Tyler Reddick certainly didn't have to because he was already locked in. He is fortunate he's locked in because he had a terrible day, and he's still going to be racing for a championship. They want to blame everything except the system that incentivizes this. And they will do nothing but complain about other people complaining. It's as if the system is so great and so perfect and so revered that we can do everything but criticize that one thing. We can look at the drivers, we can look at the teams, we can look at the manufacturers, we can give them a slap on the wrist penalty, we could suspend them for a week. Even if we did that, we are blaming everything, or we're being told we're allowed to blame everything but the system. And again, I think there are so many layers to what the culture that this system has given this, that has brought to this sport over the last 10 years, especially. You can go back 20 years to the original chase, but especially the last 10 or 11 seasons that we've had the elimination format. There's such a ripple effect. It's not just who's the most deserving champion. We could have, Joey Logano's average finish is down in the 17s this year. That would easily be a new record for lowest finish if he wins this championship. There's so many different layers to this. It doesn't just impact that. It impacts what we see in cutoff races, and particularly what we see at Martinsville. And Denny Hamlin put it perfectly on Actions Detrimental this week. It's not a Martinsville issue. It is a cutoff race issue. The very first year, everybody remembers Ryan Newman almost winning the championship without winning a race. Did you remember that he only got into the round of 4 by 1 point because Jeff Gordon crossed the line in second thinking he was good? I wonder if Matthew Owens is in our chat here. I know he certainly remembers this. I see a comment from him there. Jeff Gordon fans thought they were good, right? But Ryan Newman was told, you got to get this one more spot. So he had no problem shoving Kyle Larson out of the way, putting him in the wall. And I think the general sentiment, probably not from Jeff Gordon fans, but the general sentiment at the time was, hey, this format requires stuff like this, and this is going to be the start of such a great new era and everything. And it, to me, at least, has just been the complete opposite of it here. And Matthew says it's time for us to all admit that this format invites this kind of race manipulation, and that's okay. We accept it in F1 and whatever other discipline. It's time to accept it here. I apologize if I'm cutting out. I'm getting the message that my internet might be dipping again.
No, you're fine.
Hopefully you guys can still hear me. But he's exactly right. Even and again, this is the third time this week I'm calling out our friend Seth Eves here, because Seth and I have had this discussion for the last several years, and he has been a very staunch defender of the playoffs, very staunch defender of needing to have something to talk about this time of year, not having the championship decided early, not having a full season points format. But even he messaged me, and he sent me his own tweet on Sunday night and said, you can repost this, you can talk about it on your shows. I've had enough. I'm done. This was my breaking point. So I feel like even fans that like the excitement of this system, that defend this system, they can still look at this and say, well, hold on, we don't want this. So even if the answer, I think the answer, of course, is changing the system, but I'm also a realistic person. I know we're not going to get that from today's NASCAR leadership. They want this system. They're going to keep this system. Even if that's not the answer, we have to do something that sends a message that lets these teams know this is unacceptable, this is not okay. Because quite honestly, the situation that we have here, if the manufacturers are fine with their spotters or their crew chiefs sitting out the last race when they're crew chiefing non-playoff teams that aren't even the ones they're worried about competing for a championship, but they're trying to get into the championship for, what's $100,000 to, 2311 Racing or Richard Childress Racing with all the sponsors and all the corporate partners that they have, or certainly if you find the manufacturers, I think you need a bigger punishment of some sort than just a fine to an ultra Fortune 500 company like a Chevrolet or a Ford or a Toyota, like a manufacturer like that. I just think that what we saw this weekend is clear, blatant race manipulation. It is beyond unacceptable. And the penalties that we've been given here have just not done anything to make me confident that we're not going to see it again as early as next year.
Sorry, Josh, before you come back in, we had the same discussion on USRN after we finished calling the race last week. We were hanging on, as everyone was, to see what they were going to do immediately afterwards. And our chat turned to, well, what can we do from here? We can't go back. We're kind of, as you mentioned, Ben, we're kind of in this position with this point system and such like. Two things I want to mention also from what happened on the racetrack on Sunday, because first time I've been on the air since, so get this out. Dillon and Chastain especially, and Wallace, I suppose, to a similar degree, were only doing what they were told. Austin Dillon's not driving around there going, I better not pass Byron. He doesn't know that he could be 12 points in or whatever at this stage. He doesn't know what's going on. Well, he might do, but realistically speaking, they don't know what's happened with all the other guys around the bubble at that point in the race. So he's not going to get to the 24 and go, I better stay here. Not going to overtake him just in case. They were all being told. There was a tweet I saw. I didn't see it till Monday. If you remember during the race, Ryan Blaney used Shane Van Gisbergen as a bit of a bumper to get past, I think it was Byron actually at the time. And they radioed to SVG at some point during stage 3, one of the cautions. You've got the 12 behind you. Remember what he did to you earlier, or something along those lines in terms of points. And he just laughed it off as like, I'm not getting involved. This isn't, I'm a part-timer. I don't care.
So that's a 6 team and not even a full-time driver that they were trying to get involved in all these shenanigans.
I know it's happening everywhere. And as I said before, if you're going to have manufacturers, you're going to have this. And if, 2 more points, if Byron doesn't get in, Chevrolet are out. Their season's over. They may as well stay at home next week. They've got no one. They would have had nobody in the playoffs. It would have been, 2 Fords and 2 Toyotas if Bell had got in. And
you can't put Bell in, though.
On Bell, he messed up. He went into turn 3 way too fast, locked the rears, and he hit the wall. He wasn't trying to hit the wall and do a Chastain, as everyone. Oh, he did the.
Yes,
he was. You can't do that. No, Josh. He threw, and you could tell from his interviews when he was sitting on the pit wall. He was like,
he knew he'd done wrong because
if I get in, I messed up, and I still did it because I messed up big time.
Yeah, I mean, he went in too fast, but as soon as he knew he was going towards the wall, he went straight down and he knew what he needed to do. It was a carbon copy. I called it, but it was the second one.
I know you did.
I've
seen the end of your call. Yeah. But
sorry, man.
He messed up. He messed up. He put himself in the position to have to do that, to then get back in front of Wallace before he got to the line, because if he finished behind him, he would have been out by 1 point. Yeah. And none of this conversation would have been happening, relatively speaking.
But to your point, Aaron Bearden tweeted this as the race was wrapping up. Man, Bell did NASCAR a huge favor by riding the wall. I have no idea what choice they could have made without that. Would have had to review Bubba's situation in depth, figure out how to rule in a pair of potential manipulation situations. So in this, because Bell rode the wall, I suppose you could make the argument that what the Toyotas did and what the Chevys did cancel each other out. So then all you have to look at is Bell riding the wall. That puts him out. That puts Byron back in. But again, I like the idea that Del Reynolds proposed on YouTube this week. Just make up for what you did in 2013. We had 13 drivers in the chase. Let's just have a championship 3 this year, because neither Chevy or Toyota should be able to get away with what they tried to do with their manipulation shenanigans on Sunday night.
No, because as Matt said earlier on, the Chevys might just as well stay at home. They've got no one. They'll have no one there. They can just stay at home. So it would become like cars. We'll just have those 3 on the circuit because everyone else will back out. There's no point in running. Yeah,
and Matthew brings up a fair and valid point here. We have to draw a line on what we care about and what's too far. Drafting at Daytona, doing what Blaney did to help Logano in the last laps at Vegas. Teams pitting next to each other. What's the line? I don't know. I feel like because because people brought up, they work together at Daytona and Talladega all the time, but that's a track where you have to work with your teammates in the draft, and that's part of the accepted ethics of racing. There, you're not going to win without a drafting partner. I mean, and poor Parker Retzlaff, this came back this weekend too. I mean, just absolutely so wrong how he got treated by the execs at Chevrolet and what happened to him. I hope that that it's not a stain on his career, because it certainly shouldn't be. He was trying to do what he could do to put himself in the best finishing position. It was only his second ever Cup start, and you just happened to be in position to push it forward to the win in Harrison Burton. And it's absolutely a criminal how they treated him after that race. So I don't know. I don't think that you can really draw drafting comparisons here. I know that, I'm trying to think, I think Kurt Busch got that win at Atlanta back when he and Ross Chastain were Ganassi teammates, and Ross, he kind of used Ross as a pick there. I feel like that kind of gets into the little sort of the more shenanigan type sort of deals here. But
do you want to go back to the most famous one?
Sure.
2001 Daytona 500. Just saying.
Yeah.
You've got Dale Earnhardt, who's got 2 teams ahead. He's drivers ahead of him, driving for his team. He's holding back. He's decided that he's not going to go for it, and his drivers are. And he's ducking and diving, stopping everybody going through. And then you've got Michael Waltrip being pushed over the line. I
don't know that Michael. Yeah, I mean that's a fair point, though. That is a fair point.
It's the most famous one I know of.
Yeah, and it ended unfortunately, and it ended in tragedy. But I don't know. I mean, I guess that, but again, imagine if we had a playoff system in 2001, right? I would think Dale Sr.'s maybe got to think he's going to win a race at some point anyway. It's Michael Waltrip's first race. Why not get Michael in the playoffs? And then, that's his best chance to win. I mean, this system invites so much of this crap.
It's broken. It's broken.
I don't know why it's a cardinal sin to look at the system that we have to crown our champions that puts these drivers and these manufacturers in these positions where it tempts them to do this. And then they actually do it. And we say, oh, well, will you please not blame the playoff system? That's such a cop-out. That's so, that's really, again, it just drives me insane that we can't even have the conversation. If we want to agree to disagree, that's fine. But can we should not be considered bots on Twitter for even asking the question. That's really what gets under my skin. Why can we not even have the conversation in the first place? That's what I want to know.
Are we still talking about NASCAR or the general election?
Well,
just
it's
a good metaphor too. We can't even have the conversation anymore.
No, you can't.
Before we move on, 2 additional points of the same conversation, but not NASCAR related. No one was bothered that Oscar Piastri moved over on Saturday and gave Lando Norris an extra point. Not that it mattered in the end. We'll talk about that later. And Josh, do you remember? I can't remember if it was last year or the year before in the Moto3 finale at Valencia. Wasn't there something stupid happening in that race where whoever was going for the championship kept being dive bombed, and they were trying to push him back in the order by all the other manufacturers.
Yeah,
KTM versus Honda. I can't remember who was involved.
I can't remember, but we were all like, "Oh, this is getting silly." Yeah,
it was getting silly, but it was like, okay, well, yeah, you can see why they're kind of doing it, but it is stupid.
Yeah, we had a big day that one, didn't we, with the Moto3 and then the MotoGP.
I can't remember who was involved, but
I can't remember who off the top of my head. Who
won
it last year? Juan Masia. It was Juan Masia.
Yeah,
Dennis Foggia, and Acosta, because he was the year before. So who was that? Acosta got it wrapped up at Portimao when Foggia fell off the bike, if you remember.
Unless you put everybody in the same vehicle with the same engine and the same badge on the front, this is going to happen.
Another notable thing that on the penalty report was, of course, was Chandler Smith getting fined for the post-race altercation with Cole Custer after the Xfinity Series race. Ironically, we were just talking about Cole Custer earlier on in the broadcast as well. Smith was not happy with how Custer raced him, so he confronted Custer and tried to fight him before the drivers were separated. I said fight. It was the most pathetic backhand I've ever seen in my life. I'm sorry, but I've seen more violent fights from Megan when she's wanted the microphone in the commentary box. She digs her nails into me, and I get a really sore shoulder on my right arm. That I'm sorry, but that was pathetic. You in NASCAR? Yeah, we have fights. Get your fists out. Don't just do a pathetic little across it. Get your fists out. I joined this sport because I was promised 3 things. 1, close racing. 2, drama. 3, fights. Have I seen any of them this year? Only 1. Anyway, enough of that rant. Smith, as I said, now Smith has been fined $10,000, and we don't typically see drivers get penalised for fighting after a race unless NASCAR feels they went too far. And also, they can't make any money off it because, you know, they like to show on every single social media report under God's earth. But Ben, are you surprised by this penalty? And should NASCAR penalise drivers for fighting more often? And we know that fights have a long history in NASCAR. Case in point, that's why I've just said everything I've just said.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get the driver on the... Was it Myatt Snyder? Austin Hill, like, genuinely punched somebody and, like, knocked him onto the ground at Martinsville a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago.
I want to say it was Myatt Snyder. Don't quote me 100% on that.
There was Ty Gibbs and someone in the spring race there last year as well.
Ty Gibbs and Sam Mayer went back and forth. Yeah, but that was the fall race when Ty came back and dumped his then teammate at the time, Brandon Jones, for the win. And again, he was already locked in. Brandon Jones wasn't. What does he come back to? This damn playoff format. I'm sorry. There's no way around it. This just seems very, very silly to me. Like you said, Josh, it was really just the most pathetic fight, if you can even call it that. I mean, and I get Chandler Smith's frustration for sure. We talked about this in Encore a little bit Monday night as well. You know, he was interviewed after Homestead and said, he told Fox Sports' Bob Bockhurst, like, look, I could be working for my dad's construction company next year. Maybe that comment is why they wanted to make the punishment hurt a little bit and say, oh, this kid doesn't have any money. Let's go ahead and fine him. I don't know. It seems very, very strange to me that they would intervene in this kind of situation when we've seen fights in NASCAR before, and all the drivers have gotten is just, probation or something, again, an even less slap on the wrist penalty than the one we were just talking about, Matt. So I don't know. I mean, I think, like, if it's a case like what we saw, the reason I brought Austin Hill up was, like, if you genuinely injure a driver or risk hurting a driver or clearly egregiously cross the line, then yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with NASCAR intervening. But this here, like, it can't even really call it a punch. It was more just kind of like a slap on the shoulder here, like, what are you doing, man, or something like that. I don't know. It didn't seem egregious enough to me to warrant much of any sort of situation here when, like I said, far more violent fights, dare I say. Maybe that's not 100% the right word, but we've seen stuff in the past go completely maybe not unacknowledged, but unpunished in this regard, or not fined in the same way. Again, it's more consistent inconsistency. I don't really know that I agree with this one.
Yeah, NASCAR lining their pockets ready for the Christmas party with this one. I feel like I don't know the ins and outs of why it happened. I've seen the clip, and then now we see, obviously they had the penalty report out yesterday, and you're just like, what? Huh?
And
whatever.
Yeah, and we confirmed it was Myatt Snyder who was on the receiving end of that punch from Austin Hill there. So just to clarify, but yeah, I mean, again, a situation like that, sure, but not something like this. It seemed relatively minor to me. I don't know that it needed this.
I suppose, as you say, Matt, as well, lining the pockets for the Christmas party as well, because the stewarding this year...
I say that as jest, obviously.
Yeah, well, I say about the FIA all the time, so we're fine. But the stewarding this year, I think we keep talking about this so much about stewarding this year, but it has been severely inconsistent, like across the board. It has not set precedents at all. And they have been the most vocal championships saying, like, we actually want to set precedents. We actually want to make this means this, that means that. But actually, that means this and this means that. It doesn't make sense. They are changing it every single time they move the goalposts. And whether it being start times, when race ends, when a yellow comes out, do we actually mean that we know there's a caution coming, but we're going to wait until the millisecond before? It's, to both of you, we'll start with Matt on this one. Do you reckon that it's got to be got under control quite quickly? Otherwise, it's going to lead to much more issues, potentially coming into Phoenix, where we're going to have a situation where everyone's going to be pretty much split 4 ways.
Yeah, and it could happen in any of the 3 races, I suppose, couldn't it, over the weekend with all 3 championships on the line? To Ben's point, it consistently inconsistent, and I feel like it's worse this year than it's been recently. And you mentioned, Josh, with race control calls as well. well, maybe I'm paying more attention to it, but just I don't know. There's lots of championships that have got to get lots of things under control over the off season. This probably won't be one of them.
Oh, you're going to enjoy Hots and Knots.
Yeah, I'm preempting Hots and Knots later.
Yeah, well, and I don't know. I mean, people are going to bring up. In fact, I think we might have gotten a chat comment here. But 1979 Daytona 500, like the race that really took NASCAR to another level, and kept it from really just still being a regional Southern sport, and put it on national, CBS live flag to flag coverage, and it ends with that. Like, of course, everybody's going to associate, that with a finish, and that's an all-time classic moment. So I don't know, maybe fights are so common in hockey in the NHL, like, the referees have like a code of conduct. If 2 players start getting into it, like only when a player gets taken to the ground do they actually step in. They let the fight go on until it gets to that point, and then, appropriate penalties are handed out from there. I don't know. Maybe I guess fights aren't as common in NASCAR, but they are, they certainly aren't afraid to show them in highlight reels, and it's a part of NASCAR lore. Maybe we do need to come up with a more consistent way of regulating those.
Yeah, if there's blood, then maybe as well. First with a broken nose. That's my point of view on it all. But thanks, guys. Ben, you're leaving us now after the segment as well. So thank you very much for hopping on as well. Matthew's saying, I'm actually pit crews.
I'm actually, Matt, I'm glad you brought this up, because the one parting shot I want to give here before I sign off, I do want to talk a little bit about the Owners' Championship and everything. First year I watched this sport was 2007. And I remember a race at Dover when Scott Wimmer moved over to RCR's number 21 AutoZone car. Jeff Burton was in the 29 Holiday Inn car that week. Wimmer and Burton won the Owners' Championship that year. Everybody remembers Carl Edwards running away with a Drivers' Championship, but Burton and Wimmer were working together in that 29 to win RCR the Owners' title. And Wimmer was running this race alongside Burton in the other car for Childress. And the 21 pit crew had let him down. The 29 was shuffled back. So they brought in the Holiday Inn guys to pit the 21 car in the final pit stop, and it ended up benefiting Scott Wimmer. I think he finished 3rd that day. So that's an example that's always stuck with me off the top of my head. I know there have been other examples, like with Hendrick, and Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson in the past as well. But I think it's a loophole that they certainly exploited and took advantage of. More power to them. But yeah, I mean that is something that you could ask that question. I think it's a very fair question. And see, again, our sport is so unique in that it's an individual sport in terms of drivers, but there are very much teams surrounding that driver. And then there are teammates within those single teams and organizations. So, it doesn't take much for loopholes like that to be exploited there. So again, something else to consider in the larger race manipulation conversation. But Matt, I do want to encourage you, keep an eye on Eric Almirola this weekend, because if he wins this Owners' Championship in that number 20 car that is owned by Joe Gibbs 17 years after he got pulled out of that exact same car in Milwaukee, I mean, that might be one of the most full circle moments in the history of this sport. So that is, I hope that I almost said NBC. I guess it's the CW now, but it's still, I'm going to say NBC. It's all the NBC crew and everything. I hope that they don't, let that story get lost in all the championship for situations here. I hope they bring it up, because if Eric goes out and wins this weekend, or even if he's just the highest finishing of the 4, or if Cole Custer wins and Eric's second, because the double zeros, the team at 20 cars taking the place of in the Owners playoffs. I mean, again, I think it's ridiculous enough we have this championship forum, a Drivers' Championship side of things. For the Owners' Championship, I think it makes things even more silly, but it is what it is. That's the situation the 20 team is in right now. And if they win this championship, I mean, more power to Eric Almirola, and he deserves all the credit in the world to come back, after being a Gibbs development driver, the journeyman career that he has had. He has every right to celebrate that title, and his fans have every right to celebrate that title as if he won a Drivers' Championship, because although there is not as much prestige within the fan base for the Owners' Championship, it is still a thing. It does still matter to these teams. And I think, Eric has one goal in mind this weekend, and he knows exactly what that is.
Absolutely, and I'm going to be looking forward to that one to keep an eye on it. Ben, can I push you for a championship prediction before you leave us tonight?
What series? Are you talking Xfinity and trucks? Or?
Let's go Cup Series.
Cup Series.
Keep it on brand, and then you've got a bit more.
Sure, we gave Xfinity and trucks on Encore this weekend,
did,
or Monday night rather, I should say. So you can go check out those clips for that. Man, I don't know. I feel like it could go either way. I'm hoping, for the sake of the least controversy we could have, because if Logano wins, it's the worst average finish, and everybody's going to call it Mickey Mouse. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying people are going to look at it that way, and the format's going to be exposed even more. If Byron wins, you got some people arguing he shouldn't even be there in the first place. If Reddick wins, that's a whole mess because of a lawsuit going on right now with the charters in 2311. So I don't know. Blaney doubles down, goes back to back. I'll go with Ryan Blaney. I think that would be a nice story. And again, I think Ryan Blaney, I cannot for the life of me understand why he is not the most popular driver in this sport. I think his family has been in this sport for a long time. He's very, very strong with the fans. I think he's got a great personality, and he's been a great champion this year. You can say his average finish isn't that great as well, but I think he's done everything he's needed to do with this system that is the same for everybody. I believe me, I don't like the system, but I don't blame the drivers for it either. Ryan Blaney, more power to him for what he did last year and what he could very well do again this year. That'll be my pick.
He's playing it quite well, isn't he? I mean, you don't just get enough so that you're in contention and then start working at the playoffs. And that's not fair, because then you waste, 26 other weeks of the year just waiting, and they are long. Having done about 20 of them, they are long. Thank you, Ben. We'll let you go for this evening, and we'll see you throughout the weekend as well. And you can catch Grid Encore on Monday night as well, which will recap the Xfinity trucks. And is ARCA on, or have we wrapped that up?
Big ARCA's wrapped up. ARCA East is wrapped up, but there is a fourth championship race this weekend. So tune in Friday afternoon here on the East Coast. I think 1:30 or so. The ARCA Menard Series West will crown champion as well. Sean Higurani looks like he's in good shape to wrap that one up. So stay tuned for that too.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Ben.
Have a good one.
Moving on to our second story of the evening then as well. And current Formula 2 Championship leader Gabriel Bortoleto will graduate to Formula 1 next year with stake F1 team Sauber. Bortoleto will become teammates with Nico Hülkenberg in the final year before the organisation's transition into the Audi Formula 1 team. Now, in 2023, he won the Formula 3 Championship before stepping up to F2 this year, and now he has a chance to win that title too. To make his move to Sauber, McLaren ended up releasing him from their driver development program. Bortoleto said the Audi F1 project is one of the most exciting ones in motorsport, and he's grateful to work alongside an experienced driver like Hülkenberg. Before the Bortoleto announcement, however, Sauber announced that they were moving on from both Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. Bottas is expected to rejoin Mercedes as their reserve driver, while the future remains uncertain for Zhou Guanyu, both graphics courtesy there of Sauber. Zhou Guanyu has released a statement saying, "I will be leaving the stake F1 team Sauber at the end of the 2024 season. I would like to thank all the fans for their continued support. You have been fantastic and you continue to inspire me. I'm immensely proud to represent my country as the first ever Chinese Formula 1 driver. I hope that my racing continues to inspire others who are following my story. I'm happy to have already achieved many things under difficult conditions in Formula 1, including scoring points in my first race, fastest lap, and some memorable battles throughout the grid. Sadly, the last 2 seasons have been challenging for all, but I want to look forward. I am positive about the future, and I am now totally focused on making sure that I can truly show what I am capable of. I'm now discussing a number of opportunities to stay in the Formula 1 paddock. We will update you to you all soon." Oh, that doesn't really make sense, that ending bit. Tell you what, you two, I'm 2 for 3 this year. I've got rid of Logan Sargent. I've got rid of Zhou Guanyu. The only one I've got left to get rid of is Lance Stroll. I am 2 out of 3. Yes, yes. I'm sorry, but a driver who's qualified 19th and 20th in all Grand Prix this year, bar the sprint race in China, does not deserve a Formula One seat. Literally, he got 11th in Bahrain, and that was it. His consistent performance has been terrible. I don't get it. Even when all the drivers have penalties, he still ends up at the back of the grid. No, I can't do it. Zhou was great when he came up from Formula 2. He was great in his first season, but after that, the car went nowhere and he went nowhere. Valtteri pushes it and he goes nowhere. Anyway, let's talk about Bortoleto because I'm just happy I've got 2 out of the 3. Next up is Lance Stroll, so I'm very happy about that. Based on what you've seen from Bortoleto on the road to Formula 1, is this a well-deserved promotion? And what does it say about the ladder system, especially now with so many drivers going into 2025?
Yeah, and before we get into Bortoleto, Josh, I also want to encourage our viewers to go back and watch the clip from our wrap-up show on Sunday because Ben really went off on Lance Stroll, and he said, I think Lance Stroll should retire from Formula One because of basically everything that you've said, Josh, because Lance Stroll has continued to underperform, and if it was any other driver, who didn't have the connection that he does, with his father owning Aston Martin racing F1, you would not be in Formula One this long, even if you did have the funding, you would not last this long because he just continued to underperform. And speaking of drivers who can perform, we've seen that from Gabriel Bortoleto, definitely a very intriguing young prospect from Brazil. Excited to see what he can do in Formula One next year. I think it's definitely a well-deserved promotion. And if my memory serves me correctly, Bortoleto is going to become the first, he could become the first Formula 2 champion to move to F1 the very next year since 2020 when Mick Schumacher won the championship and then moved to Haas the very next year. And for the last few seasons, that just hasn't happened. Oscar Piastri had to sit out, still waiting on Felipe Drugovich to get an opportunity if he ever. Look at Teo Pourchaire. What are we going to see from him? It seems like he's going endurance racing now. So we've really criticized the road to F1 ladder system because it seems like the best drivers from Formula 2 are not necessarily going to Formula 1, and that's been extremely disappointing. But since Bortoleto, it looks like he could have a really good chance of winning this F2 championship. It's not over until it's over because we have Isaac Hadjar still in the fight, and I think Bortoleto is going to be a solid driver. It depends on what they do at the Sauber F1 team, and I'm not sure what he's saying when he's saying that this is one of the most exciting projects in motorsports right now, because if you've been watching our Grid Tonight shows, then you know that there's been a lot of turmoil going on in Audi, and it seemed like a lot of people, have been very frustrated with how this is going, but they've made some key changes since then, and maybe the mood has improved, and maybe Audi will get everything going well. But to bring it all back, then Bortoleto definitely deserves his promotion based on what we've seen from him. Already F3 champion and becoming F2 champion. If you win championships at those 2 levels, you absolutely deserve to be in Formula One. And I think this is definitely a great day for the road to F1 ladder system to have someone who could be the champion of this series move up, because it's usually super disappointing to see someone who doesn't really have the best type of season in Formula 2 end up moving on, due to financial reasons.
Good for the Brazilian fans back home in Brazil, because they always come out in their droves every year. And of course, we'll talk about it later on in the show, but they absolutely did come out at the weekend in all weathers to support the Grand Prix. And it'd be great to have them have a Brazilian on the grid, first time since 2017 when Felipe Massa left Williams. So that's cool. He's just solid, Bortoleto. All through last season in F3, yeah, he won the championship, but he was always 3rd, 4th, 5th, 2nd, sometimes got the odd win. He never, to me, you look at some of these young kids coming up, and we talked a lot about Conor Zilic through the year, and I know this is very different to single-seat racing, but you look at him and go, wow, look at him. I never got that impression with Bortoleto, and I haven't really had that much of an impression looking at him this year. But he's leading the championship. We've got 4 races left in F2, at Qatar and then at Abu Dhabi to finish the season. Great for the ladder system if he can come up as a double champion, much like Piastri did, although it took him a little while. Leclerc did as well, Russell. So, we've had a little bit of a stopgap, as you mentioned, Josh, with and you said as well, Kobe, with Drugoviches and the Pourchairs of this world not getting there. But this is great to see that the ladder system is back and working. good to see that Formula One are starting to move some of the old guard out. Hello, Fernando Alonso. Yeah, I think Bortoleto will go well. That's obviously PR speak that this is one of the most exciting projects going in the motorsport world because, as you mentioned, Kobe, it's been a bit tumultuous through the season, but I think that Hulkenberg-Bortoleto dynamic will work quite well for that team going forward. So more power to his elbow.
I've got the stats. But first of all, I stand by what I said Sunday. Lance Stroll would be best off announcing his retirement tomorrow. Well, stat time, shall we? Oh, happy for Bortoleto, but I think the latter conversation is still valid and proves we need more teams, hello Andretti, to provide young, deserving drivers with those seats. Absolutely. Right. Oh, and Brazil F1 fans are incredible, very passionate. They really are. They were singing for Colapinto, and he's an Argentinian driver, and they were loving him as well. Instead of ole, 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 saying out, they're going Colapinto and all that lot. And Franco, it's fantastic. Just quickly to read the stats here on Zhou Guanyu. He has had 65 Grand Prix starts now. No wins, no sprint wins, no poles. He's had a total of 2 fastest laps, no podiums. His best result in this series, 5th on the grid, 8th in a Grand Prix, and he's had 11 retirements. That's since Bahrain 2022 as well. So I don't understand how. And compare that to Valtteri, especially in the last couple of seasons, it just makes no sense. Valtteri has scored more points. This season, however, they are the worst team on the grid. 0 points for Sauber at all, and still waiting to get one. And if they don't, they lose a lot of money. I know they've got Audi coming in, but still, it's going to be a lot. So, in the Entity IndyCar Series, Prema have announced that Robert Schwartzman will team up with Callum Ilott next year in the team's debut IndyCar season. It's a special homecoming for Schwartzman, who previously drove for Prema in Formula 3 and Formula 2. After finishing second in the F2 Program Championship in 2021, he spent 2022 as a test driver for Ferrari's F1 program. But the F1 dream hasn't worked out for Schwartzman, as he spent the last 2 years in the GT World Challenge Europe, then the FIA World Endurance Championship, and now he's back in the open wheel racing series with a switch to IndyCar. Schwartzman said he's excited to start a new adventure in America and understands it'll be a new challenge to master the ovals, the photo courtesy there of Prema. Absolute stellar bloke as well, Robert Schwartzman. He now races under the Israeli license as well, but as soon as everything that happened during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he actually came out in support of Ukraine, and he's an amazing guy, Robert Schwartzman. Honestly, such a great, amazing chap as well. So, Matt, starting with you on this one, are you looking forward to seeing what Robert Schwartzman can accomplish in IndyCar?
Yeah. This has been a long time coming, I feel like. As you said, he's had some runs in some GT cars and in the WEC AF Corsa Ferrari with Robert Kubica this season. Got a win. But otherwise, they've been not great. But he's a real talent, and I feel like he's going to be, again, much like we've seen and with a few people that have gone to IndyCar over the last couple of years from the F1 now, like Pourchaire, like Ilott a little bit, like Vips, perhaps, for to some degree, where people will go, "Who's this guy? We've not heard of him." So he could be a bit of a surprise, I feel like, in the IndyCar paddock over this season and going forward. Of course, he's got to learn the car and learn the tracks and learn the series and all that kind of thing. But he was very impressive in F3 and F2. A bit of a career dip, and now he's perhaps back on the upward trajectory again. So yeah, I'm really quite positive to see what Robert can do.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to seeing what Robert Schwartzman can do, and he's one of these other great drivers who honestly should be on the Formula One grid, because he's shown time and time again, on the road to F1 ladder system that he's deserving of a full-time seat. But unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out for whatever reason. So Schwartzman, been in sports cars the last couple of years. I'm sure that's not where he's really wanted to be, but it's better to have seat time in something rather than racing nothing at all. So it's definitely kept him fresh. And for him to get this opportunity to move to the IndyCar series, I think it's been great. And I agree with you, Matt. I think he's also going to, turn a lot of heads in IndyCar. I think once Prema, gets his IndyCar program straightened out, I think he's going to have some solid runs alongside Callum Ilott. Ilott and Schwartzman, two products of Formula 2, Formula 3 as well. Coming over to IndyCar, it seems like we've seen this growing shift of drivers who are coming from these series in Formula 2 and Formula 3 that they are coming to the IndyCar. So it really started, with like Christian Lundgaard and all of that. And since then, we've seen Ilott come and Teo Pourchaire as well. And Yuri Vips, as you mentioned. And speaking of Yuri Vips, was reading an article on Racer.com earlier today. And unfortunately, according to Marshall Pruitt, it doesn't seem like Yuri Vips is going to get that, third Ray Hall seat. It seemed like, that is like a back and forth between Pietro Fittipaldi and RLL trying to figure that out. And Vips, I don't know what's going to happen to him. He's remained loyal to Ray Hall, but, his business, right? So there may not be a possibility for him to go there. But interestingly enough, Marshall Pruitt said that Devlin DeFrancesco is one of the front runners for that third seat at Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. So if that happens, quite an interesting choice there. But getting back to Schwartzman, I think he's an exciting young driver. And as you mentioned, the ovals are definitely going to be a challenge for him, as is for all drivers who come from the Formula One side of things in Europe. But given what we've seen from him in the past, he's a hard worker, and I think he'll get up to speed, and we may see some surprises from him in year one in the NTT IndyCar Series. But all in all, I think Prima knocked it right out of the ballpark with their first driver lineup in IndyCar of Ilott and Schwartzman.
I couldn't agree more. A fantastic lineup as well, and I can't wait to see what we're going to have for 2025. It feels like we're in pre-season testing because we're doing Valencia for Formula E, and that's now moved to Jarama in Madrid. And it feels like we're actually starting the season, not ending the season. There's still so much to go. It's a weird mindset you've got to put yourself into because you're talking about 2025 a lot. Speaking of Spain, with MotoGP's Valencia Grand Prix season finale cancelled due to the historic flooding in Spain, the championship decider has now moved to Barcelona. Barcelona will keep the same date as Valencia, with the Solidarity Grand Prix taking place on Sunday, November the 17th. MotoGP says instead of racing in Valencia, they're going to race for Valencia and keep those affected by the floods in their thoughts as the region goes through the recovery process. They've decided to race in Barcelona because it was the easiest option for fans who were already planning to attend the final race of the 2024 season in Valencia. That is true, as you have to go through Barcelona in order to get a second plane over to Valencia, having done that trip myself. Jorge Martin enters Barcelona with a 24-point championship lead over Pecco Bagnaia with a sprint race and a Grand Prix remaining. That is a total of 37 points left on the board. The graphic courtesy there of MotoGP. Kobe, starting with you, given the situation in Valencia, was moving the race to Barcelona the best possible outcome?
Yeah, definitely, Josh. I think that this was the best move that MotoGP could have done, given the circumstances. We definitely continue to keep the people across Spain in our thoughts, because those floods continue to see the videos and photos coming out of the region. That is just awful to see what's happened. But yeah, I'm glad MotoGP was able to figure out a solution, with just the race happened just a couple of weeks' time, because in situations like this, you can't always, get the track ready, in just a few weeks' notice. You may need, a few more weeks to get ready for that. And luckily, Barcelona was available, and MotoGP contacted them, and they were able to host a finale and given where it is in the region, also in Spain, that's also convenient for the people who had planned to attend the Valencia Grand Prix. And now they can attend the Solidarity Grand Prix, which I think is a really wonderful name for a race in honor of the victims of this terrible flooding. And this is also the best option compared to what you were saying last week, Josh, about some other potential options like going to Qatar, something else, or making the penultimate race of the season finale, and doing double points for the sprint and double points for the Grand Prix, which I think probably would have been a disastrous scenario. But all in all, I think this worked out the best way that it possibly could have by moving this from Valencia to Barcelona.
Oh, I get it. Everybody said that they hate the double points. I get it.
Yeah, we talked about lots of potential scenarios, didn't we, on the show last week when it was a little bit more up in the air. But the most important thing is, for the sporting aspect, is we can go and have the final race of the championship with it still in, well, I was going to say slightly up in the air. I guess Jorge Martin's got a hand and 3 fingers on the trophy after what happened at Sepang. But I mean, Barcelona's been affected by this weather as well. Let's not forget, over the last week or over the weekend. So it's all of that sort of southern half of Spain has been just decimated. And as Kobe said, we keep everybody in our thoughts. Another thing that we didn't mention when we were talking about it last week was tyres. Where could they easily get tyres from Michelin and Dunlop too. Well, they're based in Europe. It doesn't take long to get to Barcelona, so seems like a fair shout. Weather should be fairly okay on the cold side, not like we get when we go there in the summer. But again, disappointing in various ways that MotoGP, the World Championship, is having to go to the same track for a second time this season after a double at Misano. I know this is a different situation, but they need to do their calendar much, much better. And of course, it was always going to be in Spain because cash money.
I wonder what happened to the reserve race that was on the calendar at Baltimore Park, in Hungary, that everybody said, don't worry, in case we need to add a race, we've got a backup. Here it is. It's in Hungary. Oh, don't want that one. Don't worry, we've got the Hungaro ring as well. Yeah, by the way, next year we're going to have the British Grand Prix at the Circuit of Wales. Yes. Dorna, just give up. Liberty Media, welcome. Come in. We actually can't wait for you. Well, yeah, they can't muck it up any worse than Dorna have, honestly. Every single journalist and every single team owner and every single rider I've ever spoken to in MotoGP and on World Superbikes have all said the same thing. They can't wait for Liberty Media. It's going to be a lot better. And and about Qatar, we knew this beforehand when we needed to change over to San Marino. They were looking at the possibility of doing a second race there because it was a week after the Formula One, but Qatar wouldn't pay the extra $1 million. So they wouldn't pay to host the race fees. And like we said, they shouldn't need to. They're doing MotoGP a favour. MotoGP should pay them. You shouldn't have to host another race and cost you any money as well. The tyres, they take 15 days to make. So with the gap we've got now since the start, and when they knew about it, they were going to have enough tyres prepared. It takes one tyre is produced every 20 minutes at Michelin and at Pirelli, because don't forget we've also got Moto2 and Moto3. Yeah, Pirelli are there too.
Dunlop also had it.
Oh, did you say Dunlop? I didn't even realise.
I did, yeah.
Well, Dunlop also do support the other support series, which would be the Red Bull Rookies. So that'll still be Dunlop tyres. I suppose there's 3 really, but it takes, as I said, 20 minutes. Sorry, someone knocked my door. It takes about 20 minutes to correct up, so that's all good news as well. So that's wrapped up the main news for tonight. Let's hand over to Matt White for the latest from our Grid EPI update.
Thank you, Josh. A big weekend in the Grid Endurance Performance Index this weekend. We have champions crowned in the World Endurance Championship. We'll get to the champions in a minute. We'll tell you about the race. The BAPCO 8 Hours of Bahrain, which was on Saturday afternoon for us in Europe and evening time in Bahrain into the night time. And a win for Toyota. Sebastian Buemi, Rio Hibakawa and Brendan Hartley coming out on top in the 8-hour race to conclude the season. In GT3, Francois Heriot, Simon Mann and Alessio Rivera won for AF Corsa. That means the championship or championships have gone the following ways. In GT3, Alex Malikin, Joel Strum and Klaus Bachler have been the class of the field in that series all season. They take the championship for drivers, so congratulations to them and the Man5 Pure team. And in Hypercar, Andre Lotterer, Kevin Estre and Lauren Vanfour took the championship. They finished 10th in the race. That was enough for them to win the championship. Toyota, they pipped Porsche by 2 points in the Hypercar Constructors Championship. So congratulations to Toyota. They had all these new manufacturers coming in to try and take the Manufacturers Championship away from them, and they still managed to come out on top in the end. So congratulations to them. Hertz Team Jota were the winners of the Hypercar Cup for privateers. That wasn't the only race at the weekend. We were also in action at Motegi in Japan for Super GT. GT500 and the overall race victory was won by Sho Tsubi and Kenta Yamashita. Takeshi Kagure and Yuya Motojima were the winners in GT300. Now, points in the Grid EPI. There has been a change, and that is a big one because Andre Lotterer, Kevin Estre and Lauren Vanfour only finished 10th in the race on Saturday. This is what's happened to the points. Lotterer was our leader last week. He slips to 3rd position, and that was his last race for Porsche, as we talked about last week or the week before on the show. So that is Andre Lotterer's season done. Dane Cameron, as we know from the IMSA Championship, his season is done. Lawrence Vanfour goes back to the top of the point standings by the mere matter of 0.05 of a point. He has still action to come in a couple of weeks' time at Macau in the GT World Cup race. I've already done the calculations. He must finish in the top 2 to be the Grid Endurance Performance Index champion of 2024 to go with his World Endurance Drivers Championship, which he picked up at the weekend. So that is going to be now the key race. at Macau in a couple of weeks, the GT World Cup race with Lawrence Van Voort in it, and he must finish in the top 2 to be champion. Otherwise, it goes the way of Dane Cameron. Yamashita and Tsubei, they're jumping back up into the top 10. They were top 10 guys earlier in the season. They've got their second win on the board, and they are back into the top 10. This weekend coming up, we are at Bathurst, the greatest piece of tourist road on the planet, for the final rounds of the GT World Challenge Australia Championship. 2 races over the weekend for them. It's the Bathurst International this weekend. There's the top 50 as it stands through 32 weeks. We haven't got many races left to go in the Grid Endurance Performance Index, but there is a vital one to come at Macau. We'll preview it next week on the show to determine who will win the Grid Endurance Performance Index of 2024. Now time to hand over to Kobe. More headlines from the week that was in motorsport.
Thanks, Matt. Time for some more news from around the world. Triple Eight announced the continuation of his super cheap auto racing wildcard program for the endurance races at the Ben Motorsport Park in Bathurst 1000 and next year's Repco Supercars Championship. Craig Lowndes will return to the number 888 Chevrolet Camaro, but with a new co-driver since Cooper Murray is off to Erebus full-time next year to replace Brody Kostecki. Lowndes' new co-driver will be Zach Bates from Dunlop Super 2, who currently leads the championship by 39 points, entering the Adelaide season finale. Bates is the continuation of Triple A's wildcard program for young drivers that began in 2021, as we've seen the likes of Brock Feeney, Declan Frazier, Zane Goddard, and Murray all get main game experience. Bates said his immediate goal is to learn from Lowndes and the team, with the long-term goal of eventually becoming a full-time supercars driver. Photo courtesy of Triple Eight. And staying in the supercars family with Brody Kostecki coming to Dick Johnson Racing in 2025, he's also bringing a little flair from Airbus Motorsport with him. Next season, Kostecki and soon-to-be teammate Will Davison are set to drive a chassis that was built by Erebus. Highly respected fabricator James White has built championship-winning and Bathurst 1000 winning chassis since 2017. DJR's chassis was previously built by Pace Innovation, which is based on the Gold Coast. And with Kostecki leaving Erebus, driving one of their chassis should help make his transition to his new team a little bit easier, since he'll have some familiarity with how this car is set up. Photo courtesy of Supercars. And after winning the IMSA GTP title for Porsche Penske Motorsport, Felipe Nasr will get to test an IndyCar for Team Penske. Nasr will participate in a test session at the Thermal Club on Tuesday, November 19th. He previously tested with Team Penske's IndyCar program last year at Sebring. Before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Nasr seemed destined to make his IndyCar race debut with Carlin Racing, but things changed during the pandemic, and ultimately Nasr didn't get to make a start in IndyCar. Tim Cindric, president of Team Penske, told Racer.com that Nasr is essentially testing due to his Formula One and open racing background, but his main program will continue to be IMSA GTP. Photo courtesy of Chris Owens from Penske Entertainment. And starting next year, the NASCAR Euro Series will rebrand and drop the Whelen name in a new multi-year strategic plan with Team FJ to develop NASCAR in Europe. The series plans to introduce a third-generation car in its first stage and gradually improve the car over time in several stages. There will also be a new driver development ladder system with management support and scholarships that will allow Euro Series drivers to move to NASCAR. In America, NASCAR itself will also take a more prominent role in helping the championship's image by becoming the main brand to align the Euro Series with other NASCAR series across the globe, kind of like the Mexico Series and the Canada Series. Just keep it as simple as that. The 2 Euro Series championships will be renamed Pro and Open, with Pro focus on professional drivers and elite amateurs, while Open will have young talents and gentleman drivers. And something else that they're going to do with this development program, approved Euro Series drivers will also be eligible to enter NASCAR road course races here in the United States. And they're going to be calling this the Road to America program, which is going to be a European-based NASCAR training and testing team, which is going to organize tests for these drivers at European tracks. And Team FJ is also going to help find these drivers opportunities to race it on the road courses in the United States to make going from Europe to America a more realistic goal for these drivers. Graphic courtesy of the Euro Series. And with that said, going to turn it over to Matt for Hots and Knots.
Thank you, Kobe. No pick a winner tonight, because the only pick a winner race on the schedule this weekend is the Cup Series finale at Phoenix. Just a quick mention to get your picks in for the race win and the championship win. Bonus point up for grabs this weekend for that. Only 10 races left to go in pick a winner for 2024 looks like Matt B has got it wrapped up, unless there's some pick-a-winner championship manipulation going on. Of course, I joke. Hots and knots for myself and Josh to get our teeth into what was a busy weekend. I have a newsy hot, which I'm surprised we didn't drop into his news segment. Tower Motorsports, John Ferrano in LMP2 next year in IMSA. He's signed Sebastian Bourdais to be his teammate, and that means they've won the championship already. That is a sensational signing by Tower, and that is going to be excellent to see.
I thought you were going to go in somewhere else because I started asleep. So, like, if you just for you to say, like, have you woken up from Brazil yet? And all the waiting around.
Oh, yeah,
I was like,
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We talked about NASCAR, obviously, and all the stuff, but I thought Blaney's drive through the field in that late laps was brilliant. And Denny Hamlin to come from the last, he didn't quite make enough places to get in or win to get in, but to come from last all the way through, I thought was very good as well. And maybe we finally got passing sorted with this tyre stuff they've done for the short track. So something to look out for when we get into next season. Of course, Bowman Gray kicks off the year with, well, that race is just going to be crazy anyway. When we get into the proper races next season, was there any hots from Motegi? Not Motegi, Sepang even. I thought there was plenty of knots to come out of the weekend, which we'll get to. But
so many knots. No. Not really. That's the problem. David Alonso won for a 13th time.
Just mega.
He just can't stop, can he, that kid, as well? He's now got the record for everything. He's like 200 points ahead in the championship. I don't know how the hell he's done that. But yeah, out of 19 races, he's won 13 of them. So that's just insane. He's like something like 70%, something like a win rate. It was a smooth weekend, really, unless you're Bagnaia. I suppose the only big hot that came out of it is that Jack Miller walked away from what a couple of years ago would have been certain death. I think looking back at that replay, you can probably see it in the commentary if you go back, I was shocked to see him have his helmet get caught up in the tyre and rip into the bike of Quartararo. And then to see his legs get run over as well was unbelievable. And for him to get up and walk away and be walking about 10, 15 minutes later was unbelievable. And Binder and Quartararo as well to do it. Binder withdrew from the race, both of them did. But for Quartararo, who had a limp, he got back on the bike and he finished sixth. What a rider. Fantastic. That was a great hot. And I think Bagnaia fighting back from a Saturday blue was good. Martin on a Saturday as always, but it's monkey see, monkey do. It's one of the two. They're completely outmatching each other. But it's because Martin's had more sprint wins and more better results. It sort of puts it in like he's got the championship, which it's weird because it's 10 wins for Bagnaia now, the perfect 10.
Yeah.
And Martin's only had 3, but he's had more sprint wins. It's like the point, why does a sprint now is affecting the championship? I still don't like the sprints in MotoGP. They're too many and too far between. But other than that, from Malaysia, not much happened. It was a quiet weekend. All the drama was off the circuit, trying to get the final round of the championship sorted and trying to stop Maddie Patterson as well, buying new horses and that lot when she was having drinks in the Kuala Lumpur bar, I saw. So yeah, that was fun with Max Oakley and Sam Patterson.
I think the other quick mention of hotness for MotoGP, the first 5 laps of the race on Sunday.
Oh my God, yes, sorry. Yeah, the restart race.
Just trying to knock the lumps out of each other, and every time they got to a corner, they was like, "Oh, they're both going to crash." But,
okay.
They stayed on.
I can't believe I've got the ultimate hot, but that was because there was so much on that weekend and it was so long in the day. But yeah, you're right. Those first 5 laps were some of the greatest MotoGP racing we've ever seen because it was literally those two and nothing left to lose, knocking 7 bells out of each other for the first time in their championship battle. And I loved it. I could barely catch my breath after that one. And it was, 6 a.m. in the morning? I think I woke about 4 people up that lived down the street as well. And we're in a soundproofed commentary box. It was amazing, MotoGP, 5 laps. And then it all got very boring as soon as Marc Marquez did Marc Marquez.
Yeah, and Martin settled for second. But yeah, it was good. But see what happens. This is going to be how it's going to be like all the time when we get rid of the aero in a couple of years' time, which is just mouth-watering. Interlagos, then Brazilian Grand Prix. Again, I think we're going to have lots of knots here, but the biggest hot, I feel, of the weekend is Alpine.
Oh,
yes,
fantastic.
They got fairly lucky with their strategy, but you have got to be there. And they did that with Ocon and Gasly to vault, what was it, 9th to 6th in the Constructors' Championship in one swoop. Excellent. Well done to Team Enstone.
Finally, a bit of luck, and it's healed them. I like that.
Yeah.
I think it's fitting, the fact that Ocon's leaving, and it's healed the teammate. Even before they worked together, they hated each other, and it's sort of it's healed it. And to see the interview with Canal Plus being like, brothers in arms, I like it. It's healed. That race had everything, and it healed everybody. It was great, and it healed Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. It healed Fernando Alonso and Liam Lawson. It healed. Lawson and Alonso were loving each other afterwards in the press conference.
I didn't mean those two. I meant the ones before that you mentioned.
Oh, Hamilton Verstappen. Oh, you haven't seen it? Oh,
No.
Lewis replied to a comment on Max's post and saying, "Amazing drive, man," with a fist bump, and then Max responded as well, and they were being kind to each other. So I thought, and then we got the Alpes. Honestly, I was like the end of a movie as well, when everything gets wrapped up in a neat little package. It was fantastic. There's a lot of knots, though, from this weekend, so that's probably the good ones. Bateman was great, though. I getting a 10-second time penalty for whatever reason, I don't know, but still, Bateman was great. Bizarre.
That was random, wasn't it? He crashed into someone, spun himself, and then got penalised for doing so.
Yes, the shows. Right.
Yeah.
What else do we have on? I don't know, NASCAR. Yeah.
Adam says, before we go to knots, what's hot is Hamilton driving the old Senna McLaren. Yes, that was cool. I watched the onboard lap is on F1's YouTube channel. If you haven't seen that, go and check it out. It was the car that he used in Suzuka, and they had to patch up the damage from where he and Prost came together at the first corner. And it's been sat in storage ever since. SVG finishing 12th in the Cup race at Martinsville. Yes, I agree. He had a good run on Saturday as well, actually, before it went away in the second half of the Xfinity race. But yeah, good finish for Shane in Martinsville in the Cup race. Let's transfer to Knot. We'll come back to Interlagos. Let's do it in chronological order.
Yeah.
MotoGP. You mentioned the accident at the beginning, which was horrible. And the ticker across the bottom said that all riders were conscious. It doesn't mean that all riders are perfectly fine and jumping up and down in the gravel trap going, yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah.
Because Jack Miller wasn't. He was being attended to on the racetrack for quite some time before he was led to the ambulance, wasn't he? Which was brought back to the pit lane. The fact that we got to see all the replays again, it was just, they've got to stop doing that. Absolutely have to make sure, until we know for absolute certainty that riders are okay, please do not show me replays that look like that. Because as you said, he could have lost his head and then Duan Mir ran over his ankles. So that was horrible for Jack. Thankfully, he was okay. But please stop showing the replays before we know that they're actually fine.
I think we saw it 5 times, didn't we?
I've lost count.
20-minute red flag, saw it 5 times. You don't need to. Once is enough, and only after we know he's okay and up and walking around. I don't want to see it. We saw it live, for God's sake. We knew what happened. It's like, I absolutely am convinced that if what happened back in 2011 happened again, MotoGP would probably still show it. And it still bugs me to this day that on the F1 archive and on the MotoGP archive, those races are still available in full.
Really?
And you can watch, and you can watch them. You can see Senna, you can see Simoncelli, you can see Bianchi. I hate it. You can go back and look at it. It's not right to go back and watch. And I think they've even got Anton Hubert's accident as well. So it's horrific, and they need to stop it. Formula One have stopped. Thankfully, they understand now. Don't show it unless We know they're all right.
Okay.
But MotoGP haven't got that. And having been in that position this year now as well, not obviously as seriously as what it is, but I've been in that position now this year where we've had a rider, because it happened at Donington with Lizzie, Lizzie Whitmore on the Saturday, where she broke whatever it is in her hand, one of her bones. And we had no news from the team. We had no. Well, I was in the team. I was in the garage, and everyone was just sort of sat around waiting. We had no bikes in the garage. We had no news because Maddie was at the medical centre with Simon. Her family didn't know what was going on. I spoke with her grandparents who had come in, and they didn't know what was going on, and everyone was worried. And then we get Simon coming in saying, yeah, she's out for the weekend. She's broken this. Maddie's with her and all that lot. And the nerves and the scariness you feel, it's unbelievable. And I can't imagine what it was like for Jack's family, of course, and his young daughter who were watching it. It's like I can't imagine that as well, because it was bad for me watching it as a friend of them all, and I can't imagine what it's like for the family. I really can't. And it's terrific. You don't want to see replays of it. You don't want to see it again, and because it's people's lives at risk. And yeah, it's distasteful and disgraceful.
Absolutely. I have a couple more MotoGP knots or MotoGP related knots. Jake Dixon in Moto 2 was on for third place and didn't see that the checkered flag wasn't waving, and he thought it was the end of the race and ended up coming fourth, which was so silly. Sorry, Jake. And the other MotoGP related knot was they were supposed to have, before the main race, a minute silence for the victims of the Valencia floods. And that was done, but it wasn't communicated to anybody. So no one paid the minute silence respects and whatnot at the racetrack on Sunday, which of course we all be doing at 11 o'clock on Sunday here in the UK. Any other people in the UK, Remembrance Sunday this Sunday. But yeah, that was just typically MotoGP not communicating stuff properly.
It's typical MotoGP. There's no. I think Sam Patterson did it brilliantly. The weekend of miscommunication was Japan. That was it. Nobody knew what was going on. We come on Friday, we didn't know if it was the last round, didn't know if we were racing, we didn't know where we were racing. Saturday, we knew it wasn't the last round, so didn't know where we were racing. Sunday, we leave saying, all right, we're going to race in Qatar. Then by the end of the day, oh, by the way, we're racing in Barcelona, complete opposite side of the world. It was ridiculous, and it was horribly communicated.
With Carmelo Espeleta telling Spanish TV, we'll definitely be racing in Valencia.
Oh, God.
No, you won't.
Keep them away from television. Keep that.
Yeah. One more week. Let's transfer to back to Brazil. We talked about Lance Stroll. Talking of replays, they didn't show it, did they? They showed the replay of him spinning off, which was either a mistake or the potential they reckon the brakes locked or something problem with the car. But they didn't show him driving into the gravel trap. It is available on social media. I watched it this afternoon and I laughed.
I giggled too. It's like, as soon as we realised how we got in there, I was like, ha! We had it up in the commentary box on the camera, so we saw it on a replay, and I was like, ha! He's driven into the gravel.
It looks just like when you see those people filming at the side of the road when the road's flooded and people drive into the flood and get stuck, and it's like, what are you doing?
It's like you can clearly tell what's going to happen. It's like it's soaking with rain. It hasn't stopped raining for 48 hours, and you think driving into gravel is the best idea. I'm just looking forward to Rocket Powered Mohawk. The guy on YouTube who does all the outrageous things about Formula One and sits in a bathtub. Oh, mate, you've got to look at him. He's so much fun. I'm looking forward to see what he's going to say about Lance Stroll, to be fair. Imagine what I do, but a million times worse with no filter. That's him, and he goes a million times. So that's gonna be fun. I think my biggest knot from the whole Sao Paulo weekend was not the rain, not the delays, because no one could do anything about that. I thought they handled that quite well, actually, and they moved that race up to avoid the worst of the rain. So the first time they've actually listened to everybody and gone, yeah, let's not race when we could kill people like in 2014. Let's actually race a couple hours early. So I liked it. Didn't like the fact that he interrupted my niece's first birthday party, but still, I digress. I saw her enough. My biggest knot was the start procedure, which everybody means that they haven't read the rules. And there's an article coming out this on racefans.com or net, whatever it is, from Will Wood. Yeah, because me and him were talking about it. Back in 2023 at Monza, we had a delayed start for Yuki Tsunoda, who stopped on the side of the circuit. And it was an aborted start. And Carlos Sainz left the grid in an aborted start, exactly the same as this one, before the green lights were illuminated. Now, back then, the green lights had to be put on because it was a brand new procedure and they panicked. So they said, just send everyone around. And eventually they delayed the start. Now, the rules were slightly tweaked after that to remove tyre choices. Now, the original rules stated that if we had an aborted start and the start procedure was suspended, nobody could change tyres. They removed that rule, and that's why Mercedes in the second start got done for tyre pressures, because they changed tyre pressures, not tyres. So they reduced the pressures. So they were reading the rules. They got fined $5,000 a pop. But there's two things in the start procedure. If it's an aborted start, it'll come up on race control saying aborted start. It should come up then with start procedure suspended. And that's when you just have the 3 amber lights flashing. And what will then happen is the klaxon will sound and the 5 lights will blink twice, and they'll stay on to signal it's 10 minutes until the formation lap, and then everybody will come onto the grid. Now, you might notice that people were running to the grid for that, but Lando Norris decided, it's an aborted start, it's an extra formation lap, and he pulled away. So did George Russell. That's not allowed, and that's why they got penalised as well, because it was a delayed start procedure. So it was not an extra formation lap. There was no sign for that. There were no green lights that went on. It was an aborted start procedure, procedure suspended, and they put people in danger. Now, Carlos Sainz, when he did that, got no penalty. Lando Norris did. Very interested about that. There's an article coming about that tomorrow. But in my opinion, I think I was the only one who twigged that. And Will Wood said credit for tipping it, because I was going nuts in the commentary box, because I'm the sad, pathetic nerd who reads the rule book every year. And I know that rule that you've got to wait for the green light. And I knew as soon as I saw Stroll stuck in the gravel, it would be a suspended start procedure. And it was. So that's why, by the way, the race was reduced to 70 laps. And then midway through, it was reduced to 69.
Because they then did another start formation lap.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why they reduced it to 69, which actually isn't allowed. They're not allowed to reduce the race distance. The only way they can do that is exactly once the 5 lights have gone out. The only thing that can do is the race either goes to the scheduled distance or to time, and they change the scheduled distance. So the whole thing was wrong that weekend. The whole FIA procedure was wrong, and
what a shocker!
Yeah, what a shocker! What a shocker! And the stewards were wrong as well. Sorry, Johnny. Johnny's getting a lot of abuse, which isn't right, but the stewards have been inconsistent. As I said on the show before, we need dedicated driver set stewards every weekend, not this pantomime all around.
Was Herbert the driver steward again this week, was he?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My point on all of that start nonsense was it should have said, but it didn't say on the LED display, extra formation lap. It just said start aborted.
Yeah, it was weird.
Which they've also had before. Also, it took far too long for them to come up with that. It was going to be a problem, because they can see it on all the CCTV monitors. We didn't see it on the world feed that Lance was stuck. No, we did.
Yeah, but they were already lined up on the grid when we saw he was stuck.
Yeah,
because Norris was already sitting on the grid. Yeah,
so much happened in that race, and then of course you have the sprint as well. So yeah, that was all a mess. Another knot, although I can see why, was the Hulkenberg go. He went off at turn 1. He was beached. The marshals pushed him. They had a song and dance. Yeah, we've got him back in the race. He's been disqualified, which was very. I don't know if you've heard, Josh, because obviously you were doing your thing, but Ted was standing right by Nico Hulkenberg when he was told that he was black flag. Yeah. During the red flag, which was quite entertaining. Here's a very niche knot from the weekend that just bugged me, because I didn't watch the race live. I only got to watch it yesterday,
Because you were doing,
because I was away at the weekend and we came back just as the race started, and I was like, I'm not putting this on now. I'm going to do whatever and save myself for Martinsville. But I'd seen that Max Verstappen had gone from 17th to 10th on the first lap.
He did, yeah.
No, he didn't do that. He went from 17th position on the grid to 10th on the first lap. Zhou was in the gravel, Sainz was in the pit lane, and Albon was at the airport.
Yeah, he missed 3. Yeah, he actually fair point.
So he didn't go from 7 he didn't take 7 people on the first lap. He actually only took 4.
Which was done down the retroposter on the inside line. So,
yeah, sorry, Max fans. I know you'd love to explore that stat and balloon it, but I'm afraid here's the pin.
Yeah, my opinion is, I'm sorry to say, but I don't think Max did a great drive. Thoroughly great drive. But he got lucky with that red flag. And in my opinion, the driver of the day actually was, I think, George Russell. It's a weird one to say, but George kept it on the track. George didn't want to box. Mercedes made him box, and he raced the best of the conditions. To my opinion, I think driver of the day was actually George, for me, personally. Because Esteban, Pierre, and Max looked into that 50 car. George did everything to fight back from a poor weekend. And I think Lewis as well actually did good as well.
Yeah, did. And we know George goes well around there because he won a couple of years ago his first Grand Prix. One more not from the race. Again, extremely niche. We know they're going to Las Vegas next. It doesn't need to be on the display above the start-finish line for pretty much half the race. That was very annoying.
Yeah, and did you see what the official Formula One media posted the day after? Now, quickly, if you don't know, Brazil is where the Amazon is, so the Amazon jungle. But it is also home to a lot of Brazilians who are black. And you know geography terms for people who are black. Of course, Sao Paulo and Interlagos being a city that is described as a concrete jungle. So what did Formula One do to advertise the fact that they were going from Sao Paulo into Lagos to Las Vegas? Yeah, that's right. From the jungle to the desert. I could not believe it when I read it. They deleted the post, but I was like, what? I could not believe it. I literally could not believe it. I was so flabbergasted that was the actual thing. And not many people get that it's because of the Amazon jungle, which is in Brazil. Because I saw it immediately that they were being extremely racist to the people in Sao Paulo in Interlagos. I was like, what? So yeah, I think the biggest error there. And in my opinion, we're now going to have a championship decided in Las Vegas. So you just watch all of the puns and all of the championship stuff, and you watch that Formula One declare Las Vegas the best Grand Prix ever, because look what we've decided to champion here now. It stays. High roller, Max Verstappen, he's rolled the double 2, whatever the things he needs to be doing. So yeah, I'll dress up. Yeah, go on.
Is that going to be from the jungle to the desert to the other desert and then to the man-made island? Then
in the desert, yeah. And then back to the desert for testing, and then back to the land of the spiders. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so thankful Australia's the season opener next year. I love Bahrain. It just does put my head in.
Let's finish up with Adam's knot, which is NASCAR's officiating and the playoff system. I think we've exhausted that subject thoroughly tonight with Ben on with us. I think it's at 5 midnight UK time. I think it's time to go.
Yeah, I wasn't expected to be on this long, to be fair. I'm surprised I've held on. I'm very tired after the weekend. Okay. Taking a look at our upcoming... If I can do this in 45 seconds, we'll see. Taking a look at our upcoming schedule. Saturday, Grid Live pre-race is at noon Eastern. Sunday, Grid Live wrap-up is at 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series Championship race at Phoenix. On Monday, Grid Encore recapping the ARCA West Truck and Xfinity Series finales at Phoenix as well. Please do continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for helping us reach 1,000 subscribers. Now we're well on the way to the road to 2,000. You can hit the bell icon to get notifications when we go on the air, and you can follow all of our social media platforms and visit gridnetworktv.com. You can take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. You can join Colin, Mark, Zhou, Robin, David, and Matthew, who invest each month in the Grid Network, and we encourage you to join these fine folks to help us keep us on the air. And once we hit $500 per month, we can start sending our team to the track to cover more races and continue expanding our coverage. The link to that is in the video description. If you want to make a one-time donation, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link and get your name on the board and invest as much as you want. And you can consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you on the air. Less than a minute. Hey, that's good. So for Kobe Lambeth, Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, and Ben Schneider from Grid Encore and lastcar.info, I'm Joshua Birch. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Good night.